Hello again. I have been fascinated for some while by the things which it is alleged are commonly said to black people in this country. By this, I do not mean the vulgar abuse to which black people are sometimes subjected. I can believe that easily enough. There are people who are quite openly hostile towards black people and say rude and unpleasant things to them. What I'm talking about here, though, are the kind of things which seemingly well-meaning people say casually to black colleagues and acquaintances, which inadvertently cause offence. This is quite a thing at the moment, pretending that this is happening. To be blunt, I don't believe a word of what I read on this subject. The London School of Economics has always been a very right-on institution when it comes to race. I remember when psychologist Hans Eysenck was no platform there 50 years ago, being shouted down and assaulted because his work on IQs and the way in which they vary between different ethnicities did not find favour with left-wing types. It seems that the LSE has not changed because in the description to this video I give a link to a handy guide which they published just 4 months ago entitled 50 Things Not to Say to Black People. Well, of course, we can all think of things that we shouldn't say to black people, racist abuse, and there's any number of things that I would not personally say to a black person. But this document about 50 things that you shouldn't say, that you might be tempted to, really does stretch my credulity beyond its breaking point. A lot of this kind of thing has been lifted wholesale from American sources, but we're assured that this is not the case with this document. It was compiled following an online poll to quantify and qualify the experiences of a small yet diverse selection of black people in Britain. It is a list of things which have apparently been said to black people in Britain, things which have unintentionally caused offence and hurt. These are not racist insults, mind, but remarks made by, and I quote, the most unexpected people who, by all other intents and purposes, were educated, kind, and even actively anti-racist. Let's see what it is alleged such people have said to black people in this country. What colour is your blood? Are we seriously meant to believe that this has been said recently to a black person in Britain by a white person? I wonder. What about, do you eat with your hands at home? Or do you snack on dry bones? I am afraid that I do not believe that these are questions genuinely addressed to any black people in this country. Nor do I believe for a moment that anybody has said, you're actually really smart to a black person in Britain, or you know so many words. My belief is that somebody sat down and invented all this with the sole purpose of suggesting that racism is more widespread than most of us suspect, and to make white people think that the average black person has a harder time than is really the case. Can anybody here, watching this now, really imagine saying to a black woman, you're really pretty for a black girl? Can viewers imagine anybody saying that? What about, wow, you got into Oxford, were you a diversity candidate? What on earth is a diversity candidate anyway? This sounds like an American expression. Just click on the link and read all this for yourself. The aim of this kind of thing, by the way, is very simple. By any objective measure, racial prejudice in Britain has been declining for years. Those of us who can remember 50 years ago, even 40 or 30 years ago, will know that things are very different from what they once were. This is a problem, though, because if racism has dramatically declined, how are we to explain things such as the fact that black students do very poorly at A-levels, or that there are so few black professors in proper subjects such as physics, chemistry or engineering? If racism is no longer a problem, why are black people not getting on better professionally and academically? Now, this is a problem, and one way to answer it is to suggest that although overt racism has declined, it has simply changed into a different form, and that institutional racism still exists, along with microaggressions and so on. In other words, without racism, there is no longer an alibi for failure. It must be accepted that this is down to individuals rather than a wicked and corrupt society. This idea is not something which many people wish to confront. It's uncomfortable. The possibility that the reason why black people do not own small businesses or run corner shops, the reason that they do not get into medical school in Britain, and 100 other things, it's not because the world is engaged in some kind of conspiracy against them, trying to prevent them to get on. Rather, it is something within them which causes these things and holds them back. This is a scary thought for a lot of people, both black and white. As a result, desperate attempts like the invention of microaggressions and so on have to be devised to explain why the decline of racism has not been matched by a corresponding rise of black achievement. Let me end with a couple more of these fantasy microaggressions, the kind of thing which it is claimed white people routinely say to those who are black. How about, "I love your hair straight, it looks so much more professional." Or, "You could definitely pass as one of us." This is so mad that nobody really believes that hearing such things are part of day-to-day life for black people in Britain. But it is essential if the illusion of racism is to be maintained. So it is that even respectable academic institutions such as the London School of Economics plays along and publishes fairy tales like the one at which we have just been looking.